Hello, and thank you for joining us here on the Neutral Zone. I am Phil Milani, joined as always by my trusty sidekick, my partner in crime. Really, the best way to describe this person is my everything. It's at Eric Dalala.
Phil, good to be with you on another Victory Monday. Has a nice ring to it.
Are you fired up today?
Yeah, how could you not be?
Hey, what an ending against the Chargers. We're going to wrap this whole thing up on this episode of the Neutral Zone. We'll talk about the key moments, the turning points in that game. We'll give you some analysis. Plus, we'll hear from head coach Vic Fangio. He's had a chance to watch the tape. What did he think about how the Broncos were able to erase a 24-3 deficit? And then, Eric, we'll also hear from some of NZ Nation. They're fired up last night after the win, and we've got a couple of voicemails and some emails to read off. So how does that sound?
Hey, it sounds like a perfect Monday show to me.
You like it, don't you?
Yeah.
And we are now on YouTube, Eric. So if you're watching on the Broncos official YouTube page, welcome in. A little bit of a peek behind the scenes here, really. Eric had to put on some clothes. Normally you just got like a beat up white t-shirt on or something,
Exactly. Yeah. A glimpse behind the curtain here.
Exactly. If you want to be a part of the Neutral Zone, you can do that in many ways. One is by calling in and leaving a voicemail. That's 707-NEUTRAL. And you could also leave as I like to say, leave an email.
That's Eric. Right. Yeah. neutralzoneshow@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts.
You can also contact us on Twitter at Phil Milani and also at Eric Dalala. A couple of funny spellings on that. PH with Phil and an A for Eric. So
you'll get used to it.
Eric, let's just dive in then here and talk a little bit about this game. Things were ugly in that first half. I mean, let's just admit it. The Broncos really could not move the ball at all. So much so that the 5,700 fans that were in attendance were booing as the Broncos headed into the locker room. The second half, though, a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, almost two completely different games pushed together into one. The Broncos they punt 5 times on their first 6 possessions. The lone field goal they get is from Justin Simmons, and he really did all the work. They went backwards after he brought them down to the 16-yard line. They have 2 first downs in the first half. They only have 60 total yards, 2 rushing yards between Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon. And for a while, Phil, it looked like it'd be okay because the Broncos defense was playing pretty well. The Broncos had a 3-0 lead there for quite a while in the first half. But then Justin Herbert leads 2 really nice touchdown drives to end the first half, comes right out of the locker room, adds another one. And after the Broncos go 3 and out again, you're looking at a 24-3 deficit, and it just doesn't look good. And, Phil, I'm sitting there thinking, what am I going to say on the Neutral Zone tomorrow with this team at 2-5, a loss to a division rival? Drew Lock has looked poor in comparison to Justin Herbert. What do we say? Where do we go from here? And then everything just kind of turned around.
Eric, what did you think about the way that Drew played in that first half? It looked like, to me, maybe a guy who just didn't look comfortable out there, looked maybe afraid to make a mistake. Definitely not the Drew Lock that we saw at the end of last year.
I think he overcompensated in a lot of ways. We saw against the Chiefs and against the Patriots that he took all these shots down the field. And then in against the Chargers on Sunday, he was throwing short of the sticks on third down again and again and again. And there were a couple of plays, I think down to one, he's got Deshaun Hamilton streaking open toward the end zone, and instead he checks it down on third down, and the Broncos kind of miss an opportunity there for a touchdown. I don't know if it was because he didn't want to make that big mistake. I don't know if he wasn't comfortable with the protection, if it was something the Chargers defense was doing. But you're right, he did not look like the guy that we've really come to expect. And Vic Fangio said it. To say that it was bad is putting it nicely, because the Broncos couldn't really do anything for 35 minutes on offense. And Phil, it didn't really seem like they had a chance to turn it around.
Yeah, I was going to say, After he threw that interception where he tried to pump fake Jerry Jeudy open, after he threw that interception and made the mistake, to me, it felt like he got a little bit more relaxed. And he was like, well, at this point in the game, I got nothing to lose. And he was able to just go out there and be Drew Lock. And that's what it felt like to me. After he made the mistake, now he felt like, okay, well, whatever. I'm just going to do it my way.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, they had made a couple plays at least. Philip Lindsay had the touchdown at that point, which cut it to 14 points. You get the ball back quickly and you're thinking, okay, we can cut it to 7 here. There's some momentum. You're starting to feel some energy. You're not out of it with all this time left in the third quarter. And Phil, I mean, luckily for him, Bryce Callahan follows up that interception that he threw that I can see what he was trying to do on that throw, but it was telegraphed all the way. Rayshon Jenkins had a beat on it the entire time. It was going to be picked off. And so the fact that Bryce Callahan was then able to pick off Justin Herbert, which with what Vic Fangio called the best play of his career, that saved the Broncos. Because even if you get 3 points there and it's back to 17 points, the game is probably over. But you're right. Once he got that out of the way, maybe there's some renewed momentum from Bryce Callahan making that play and you thinking, okay, we just dodged another bullet. Then things just started to flow for him. The offensive line played better. He played more freely. Of course, Jerry Jeudy gets open for a big play that helps spur that next scoring drive, and things just kind of went from there.
Yeah, I mean, the Philip Lindsay run obviously got, renewed life for the entire team. But for Drew personally, I felt like he just needed to make a mistake, and then he said, okay, now I can just play. After a week of facing a lot of criticism about how he always wants to take big shots and how he, is pulling the ball and escaping out of the pocket, all week long he heard that. And I don't think it was just from the media. I think internally too, they were saying, look, you need to be able to do these kind of things where, you're not just locking into option number one. After hearing that all week, I feel like he carried into the game. And once it really got to a situation where they had no other options, that's what I felt like changed things around. We mentioned it. It was bad in that first half. Vic Fangio on Monday was asked, hey, did you have any thoughts about going to Brett Rippon?
Yeah, no, I was never a consideration. The thought never did cross my mind. You just have to start playing. We were struggling as an entire offense in that game, obviously. And, when you're going 3 and out as many times as we were, it's not – your opportunities aren't going to be good. You don't have a lot of plays, and it's not going to look good. But, I thought one of the key plays in the game was the 3rd and 8 conversion prior to Phillips' touchdown run to Deshaun. And I think that's the play that got us going. It was 3rd and 8. If we don't convert that and we punt, the whole tone of this conversation today would be probably different.
It certainly would have been a lot different, Eric. People would have been hammering on Vic for why didn't you make a move at quarterback? What's going on with the offense? But instead, Eric, the magic of winning changes everything.
That's right. It doesn't. I mean, you say that play changed things. Well, how about the play before when Drew Lock tries to throw it to Noah Fant and an interception essentially gets dropped? I mean, in that case, there's no 3rd down to convert. You don't get that Philip Lindsay touchdown. There were a lot of plays all over the place that the Broncos needed to make, and they either made them or the Chargers failed to make the ones to win the game for their side. Phil, I think overall, well, in the moment, you might think, hey, the Broncos offense hasn't done anything. They haven't been able to get first downs. They're not able to move the ball. That's all well and good, but if you bench Drew Lock, even if it's just for the rest of the game, I think what that signifies in terms of the organization's stance toward him, in terms of his development, it's hard to walk that back, I think. And so for as bad as it was, to me, making that decision, you have to consider it's about more than just that game. And so I'm glad, not just from the fact that Drew Lock played really well in the fourth quarter, becomes the first Broncos quarterback since Peyton Manning to throw 3 fourth quarter touchdowns, The 21-point comeback is the biggest since they beat the Chargers down 24-0 in 2012. I mean, all that aside, I think they made the right decision from the developmental standpoint for Drew Lock to let him just kind of work through some of these things and still show that you're behind him. Because if you pull him and you put Brett Rippon in there, Phil, you're making a statement that maybe this guy isn't what we thought he could be.
Well, I don't think it needs to necessarily be that. I think that you could simply just say, look, this isn't your day. And guess what? You got an entire team out there killing themselves trying to win. And you can't just sacrifice all that because one guy's not playing well. So I think that you could have just said, look, we're still behind you. You're still our guy. But look, today things just aren't going well. Let's see.
How often does that happen?
Rippon, if you could play, that happens all the time. I mean, guys get benched all the time. And
no, not with your franchise quarterback. That does not happen all the time.
John Elway got benched sometimes, where it just wasn't working and you got a spark, especially early in his career. So I think that there's something to be said for working through things, but I think also you could say, hey, we need a spark. We need to give the team a spark here because we feel like we're still in this thing. But of course it worked out well. I mean, and I'm not saying I would have benched him. I'm just saying I could understand coaches starting to have that thought process, but clearly the Broncos are saying, look, we're ready to go through some ups and downs here with Drew, just because we think that he needs to have those in terms of his development.
Well, and they clearly thought he still gave them the best chance to win in that situation. Phil, I don't know if you think that benching Drew Lock wouldn't have started a fire hose of conversations and takes in Denver and about the future of the Broncos quarterback position. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that would have happened if you had benched Drew Lock.
Vic could have just shut it down today and said, no, Drew is our guy moving forward. And we just felt like we needed to give a team a spark. Boom, the end of it. I mean, that kind of stuff happens.
Not the end of it. It doesn't happen all the time. It does not happen all the time.
Well, I think that
young quarterbacks.
The majority of Denver and Broncos country was at least thinking maybe we should go to Rippon.
Right, but I think a lot of people in that moment were also thinking, is this going to work long term? I mean, if you bench him, even if you say he's our guy moving forward, the next time he throws an interception, the next time the Broncos struggle in the first half, everybody's thinking, do you pull him again?
And well, he probably has that pressure on himself anyway, though. He definitely was playing like that in the first half where he was not comfortable because of that pressure. So he's putting that pressure. There's not going to be anybody who puts more pressure on himself than Drew. So the idea that, oh, maybe Brett's looking over my shoulder or whatnot, I don't think that even enters into his mind. He's just saying, I got to do this because I'm putting that pressure on myself.
I'm not suggesting that he feels pressure of Brett looking over his shoulder or that he needs to feel that way. I'm saying when you make that decision, you're signifying that all this faith that you've put in him, it's wavered at least a little bit. And I think that it was the right decision, not just for yesterday, but for the long term, if you still have hopes that he's going to become that guy, which I think he showed in the fourth quarter, at least that he has that potential. Things need to get cleaned up. He needs to be better in the first three quarters, but he has that potential. And if you go down that road, I mean, I know you're saying it happens all the time, but when you see that happen to young quarterbacks, it signifies that there's doubt there.
I don't think it has to be that. I think it's just, this was not your day. So let's just see if we can see if we can give a spark to the team. This wasn't your day and we'll move forward. I think that's all it can be that.
Who's the last guy that worked with?
I mean, I don't have an example right off the bat for you here, but I just
think
it doesn't need to be anything more than that.
When the Bears bench Mitch Trubisky, that's signifying that something has gone wrong there with that decision-making process.
Yeah, but then they decided to go with Foles moving forward, and they said that, and that was it. It's not like they went back to Trubisky, or at least they haven't yet.
They've done that in the past, though, in previous years.
Yeah.
And that has not worked long term.
I don't think that anybody's wavering on Drew, but you could just say, hey, this was not good. It wasn't going well. I mean, I'm not saying I would have done that either. I would have understood the thinking there. I would have understood that thought process. And I don't think it needs to be the end of the world or anything. I think you could just say, look, this was one game. kaput.
Yeah,
But
that's just not how the world and the media landscape works. I mean, Phil, you know as well as I do, that would have been the conversation all week.
yeah, but I think now the conversation is, hey, you didn't play well, but you somehow got us you got your team to come back and win. That's still the conversation. I mean, the conversation is always going to be, hey, how can you play better? How can you do this better? What's going on? He is going to be the topic of conversation no matter what. So I don't think that the comeback just magically erased the doubts that the first half, created. So, but the conversation moving forward, though, can be, how do we get Drew to play that loose and comfortable like he did in the second half? How do we do that for the entire game? And it was brought up on Monday that maybe the Broncos go up tempo. Maybe they play with that sense of urgency, and maybe that'll create some more success on offense.
Potentially. I mean, when you go up tempo, though, you have to get first downs. I mean, it doesn't work if it doesn't matter if you go no huddle, if you huddle and go fast, if you're gaining 2 yards and then 4 yards and then you throw incomplete on third down. I mean, because then you're off the field, and in some ways you hurt the defense more than if you just ran a normal offense. And I think that's why many NFL teams are hesitant to run an offense like Cliff Kingsbury runs in Arizona, like Chip Kelly ran at one time in Philadelphia. And that's not to say that like going up tempo on occasion means you have to do it all the time. I do think that part of the success wasn't just going up tempo. It was the Chargers at times decided to just rush four. They played coverage. They essentially were trying not to get beat. And really outside of a few plays, they probably would have been okay. There was a breakdown on the Deshaun Hamilton 40-yard touchdown. Jerry Jeudy makes a nice catch and run, shows his ability, his talent there on the drive before. Without those things, if they're able to, make a couple other plays, if there's not a crackback block on Hunter Henry on that last drive, Chargers might score a touchdown, and then, that final drive doesn't matter. So, for as good as the 3 touchdown fourth quarter was, I do think some of it came because of the defense they were playing. And, you need to show that all through the game. But I do think the fact that, you obviously would rather see it happen as opposed to just have this game finish 31-10 and have no hope. And Phil, I think for the first time since the Texans game, really, you've seen him kind of match, at least for a quarter, like the ceiling of what he could be. And so hopefully you're able to progress from that. And whether no huddle or a hurry up offense is the answer or not, I don't know. I think it's just he has to be confident in himself.
Yeah, I mean, staying on the field is crucial for this offense. I think that they just need to get confidence and get the chains moving. And Vic brought that up. He said that third down is crucial right now for this team. And heading into that Chargers game, the Broncos were converting on third down 35.9% of the time. That was 29th in the NFL, Eric. And yesterday they struggled again. They were 5 of 13. That's why you saw them, only have 2 first downs in the first half. But in the second half, they were on the field and they converted, including a couple of big plays on that final drive. I mean, Melvin Gordon's catch and then extending for the first down. Those are huge plays. And, I think that sometimes when you've got what's going on in that first half where it just seems like nothing's working, you got to mix it up. You got to try different things. You got to, try to provide some signs of life. And maybe sometimes going up tempo can do that for you, where you just, keep the defense off guard. And especially if you're going to be trying to do these check down kind of offense where you're a little bit safer, you can get some momentum going. And, we saw Peyton Manning do that all the time here. And playing at altitude, you have a little bit of an advantage too, because the defense gets a little bit winded. So I think there is an argument to maybe at least trying up tempo every now and then, just to keep that defense off balance, and also to provide some energy for the offense. Because when you go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out like that, it looks like there's just no life. There's no energy. And sometimes you just need to give them something.
Yeah, I don't know if that changes if you go up tempo, because it doesn't necessarily prevent you from going 3-and-out. And if anything, it puts your defense back on the field faster. I mean, I do think there's this notion, and we've heard it here before, sometimes in losses where, I think back to last year's Raiders game at the very beginning of the year, where the Broncos were able to drive down late and make the game close. And there was this notion of, hey, should you go hurry up earlier in the game? There's a reason it works toward the end of the game, because the defense plays softer. They're not playing the same way, especially with a double-digit lead that they have all game. And so if it were as easy as going hurry up all the time, a lot more teams would do that and would be successful consistently. It's just, to me, whether you go hurry up or not, you have to put yourself in better position to convert those third downs. And they did that in the second half. They were 4 of 6 on third down in the second half, had some shorter ones on that last drive, converted a couple via penalty. But Phil, you look at the first downs in the first half, I think their first 6 or 7 first downs, they averaged 0.4 yards per first down. And that doesn't include 2 penalties that were on first down that pushed them backwards a combined 15 yards. And so if you're getting 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, 0, 0, if those are your numbers on first down and you're facing 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9 every time, well, no wonder you're not going to be very good on first down or on third down. So that's part of it. It's just, regardless of the tempo, you just have to take advantage of these opportunities a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I'm just suggesting that with up tempo, it can just provide a spark. It can be a change. Maybe the Chargers defense can't substitute as fast, and maybe as a result, the pass rush on Drew, which was a factor in the first half, maybe it's not quite as much of a factor. Maybe some of those guys are a little bit tired. But yes, you gotta make the play so you stay out on the field. I'm not suggesting that this is a magic switch. I'm just saying sometimes when nothing is working, you got to try everything in your tool bag. And this is one of those tools. I'm not saying that it's going to be a magic fix. I'm not saying that it's going to be, all of a sudden the offense is going to come to life the exact same way it did in the fourth, because obviously, like you mentioned, you're playing a shell defense. You don't want to get beat deep. There's things that are changing that. Bosa leaving the game for a little bit, changed that a little bit, but I do think that Drew seems to play a lot more comfortable and with a lot more energy when he's just out there wheeling and dealing. And so maybe to create that same kind of environment for him, you as an offense can use this tool occasionally.
So they tried to use that tool at the end of the second quarter. They got out there. Drew threw to Noah Fant for 6 yards. They went no huddle. He threw incomplete. And then he threw incomplete again on third down. Yeah, and you punted the ball back to the Chargers using up 20 seconds, and they scored another touchdown before halftime. So, just be like, you've got to get that initial. You hear that all the time, especially in college football. You've got to get that initial first down to start the drive rolling. And when you don't, it doesn't matter if you go no huddle or not. You're not going to be successful. And the Broncos wound up giving the Chargers a chance to get another touchdown. And instead of being down,
no huddle there, no matter what you're trying to score, you got to do something at the end of the half. It's not like you're going to play conservative football there.
Right, but I'm saying I'm using that as an example.
The fact that they went no huddle there, or?
No, I'm being critical of your take that going no huddle automatically provides a boost, because I don't think in that situation it did.
Now they got the ball back, and look at what a disaster that was. That wasn't even a decision there. You have to go no huddle there at the end of the second half.
Of course you do, but it did not work. And that's what I'm saying is just because you go no huddle doesn't mean you automatically get a boost of energy that you're suggesting. I just don't think that
I didn't suggest
is the case.
It's automatic. I'm just saying you got to try and mix things up a little bit to provide some energy.
Right. Yeah.
I
don't think it ought. Well, we can go back and listen to the tape, but I don't think it automatically means that.
Neither do I.
Things are going to be okay. Well, then maybe you shouldn't say it.
I never said it. It's kind of nice. It's kind of nice when you don't say it. Eric, let's transition here and talk about the Broncos defense a little bit. They obviously provided enough great plays to keep this thing close enough for the offense to come to life there. Made a couple of interceptions that really, game-saving types of plays. The Justin Simmons, maybe not game-saving, but it got the Broncos at least on the board. And then Bryce Callahan really was game-saving. But they struggled on the ground. They gave up more than 200 yards rushing, which you don't typically see from a Vic Fangio defense. What do you see from that side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, well, the run defense, I think it was easy to see how much you miss Mike Purcell there in the middle, because now you're trying to make things work with either Sylvester Williams, Shelby Harris played in there a little bit, DeMarcus Walker. I mean, guys that are either not true nose tackles or are just not the caliber player that that Mike Purcell is at that position, and that's no knock on them. I mean, there's a reason you extend Mike Purcell. And that run defense turned around last year against the Chargers when you had Purcell, you had Alexander Johnson, you had Kareem Jackson. It's clear to me now that maybe Mike Purcell was the biggest factor out of those three players. I do think there's an element that because the Chargers ran some read option, because Justin Herbert is such a threat himself to run the ball, that maybe you have to give more attention to him, and therefore that hurts you when trying to stop their normal rushing attack. A lot of those runs that went for big yards were kind of these delayed draws. And so, I don't know if the Broncos linebackers were dropped too far off the ball, or you're focusing on coverage there, but certainly that has to be fixed as Atlanta, maybe you're able to survive, but you've got the Raiders in a couple of weeks who can just pound the ball on the ground with Josh Jacobs and eat up clock. You've got to get it fixed by then. But yeah, I mean, they made the plays when they needed to. I thought Justin Herbert was as advertised, but they picked him off twice, and they were able to, in the second half, hold them to field goals after that initial touchdown. And so, maybe it wasn't perfect. I think I tweeted toward the end of the game, I don't think the Broncos imagined allowing the Chargers to drive all the way down the field and get a field goal on that last drive, but they got him off the field, and that was enough. And in a back and forth game like this in the fourth quarter, the Broncos scored touchdowns and the Chargers scored field goals, and that's why Denver won.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the themes that has come up over and over in this podcast is that everything that needed to go right for the Broncos did, and a lot of things that needed to go wrong for the Chargers went wrong. And that's not a recipe for continual success. I mean, that was a miracle, yesterday that they won that game. And so I think defensively on Monday today, we heard Fangio really praise Josie Jewell and Bryce Callahan. Those were two guys that he, gave a lot of praise to. But overall, he said like there were some fundamental breakdowns with the run defense. And I think that, if the Broncos play like that again, they're not going to win. They're certainly not going to beat good teams. And, they got some things to correct, but the defense made the plays when it counted. They got them off the field there at the end to force a field goal. And that, I mean, you think about that Callahan interception. If the Chargers even just kick a field goal there, it's game over. There's no way for the Broncos to catch up at that point. So I just think that the defense, the secondary continues to really be impressive to me. Even when A.J. Boye went out, you didn't really even feel like, oh, now there's a significant weakness there or anything. And that Chargers offense, I mean, they got playmakers. Mike Williams, you saw that catch he made in the corner of the end zone. We know what Keenan Allen can do. That's a really good wide receiving core. And, I thought that was a nice job by the secondary, but run defense needs to get shored up a little bit.
Well, and the rushing defense was still not great in the second half, but I think in general, the Broncos defense was better, and this should be no surprise, when the Broncos offense was able to stay on the field. I mean, the Chargers scored touchdowns on 3 consecutive possessions, 2 to end the first half and then 1 to begin the second half. And that's in no small part because the Broncos offense was not on the field. The Chargers were dominating time of possession. You could tell the defense was getting a little bit worn down, especially against the run, because they were out there so much. Then in the second half, when the Broncos are able to control the clock a little bit more, you're able to get some of obviously the Deshaun Hamilton touchdown drive was really short, but the other 2 took up a little bit of time. And you're able to to kind of keep your defense off the field, give them a chance to rest. They're not having to shoulder the load completely. Looky here, the Broncos defense was able to hold the Chargers to field goals. That's not that's not by chance, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that, when you play complementary football like that, it helps everywhere. So Eric, you and I have argued a lot on this episode. It's sort of a feisty episode, I feel like.
It's hard when you're wrong about things to not argue,
I can't let your wrong thoughts just slide by.
I know you let your you left your pitchfork for Drew Lock and his job just off screen there.
I'm here to keep this an honest show, and I'm here for the listeners, and I've got to hold you accountable. So
yeah, you got your torch over there. You were chanting Brett Rippon's name in the press box.
I was not. Actually, I saw Drew Lock in the press room afterward, and I gave him a fist pound. It's pretty nice.
Probably against protocol.
Elbows maybe would have worked.
Yeah.
But he was fired up, and I want to see more of it. I think that's all I'm saying is I want to see him play like he did in that second half with energy, dancing, confidence. That's who he is. That is who he is. Now, does that mean he has to be like that all the time? Does that mean he can't check down? No. But I love seeing that side of Drew.
Yeah, and part of that is being a young player. In the first half, it seemed like he
was in his mind.
It was almost like the game plan was to check down or to take these shorter throws, and he thought, no matter what, I can't look deep, or no matter what, I can't take off and run, or I can't do these things that make him who he is. And those always have to be available as options because that's what makes him a player with a lot of potential. But it was almost like he thought, I can't color outside the lines here, or else I'm gonna or else I'm doing something wrong. And when he got back in the second half to just, I do think he did a great job on that last drive. He didn't force anything.
Yep.
He took a lot of those short throws to Melvin Gordon that if you don't make those and you don't make it 3rd and 1 there, the Broncos face a 3rd and 1 almost immediately. Yeah. If you don't take those checkdowns and instead it's 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 10 because you're trying to chuck it deep to win it all in one shot, then you're in trouble. And instead he made the right decisions, the right plays on that drive. You get bailed out a couple of times with some pass interference penalties, but and the clock management I thought was pretty good. The one play I did not like, Phil, on that drive was the pass completion to Noah Fant that I think was the 3rd to last play or 4th to last play. That took up a lot of time to gain, I think, 6 yards, and it was probably not worth it.
They should be able to. They should be able to go the length of the field, and they had the ball before the 2-minute warning, so they should be able to go the length of the field and not be in a situation where you're 18 yards out in a desperation mode there with one play. You don't need to get in that position, but obviously it worked out.
Yeah, and that there were 27 seconds left when they snapped that particular play, and then they weren't able to get back on the ball until 14 seconds, and 13 seconds at that point, obviously, for 6 yards was a little too much. It worked out. He's got a nice little connection going with Albert O. I mean, that's working nicely for them. But yeah, and again, we talked about this, I think, after the win over the Patriots. Easier to make these corrections in a win. And Phil, I'll just go back to what I said last week, is that ultimately the goal is to compete against teams like the Chiefs. It's to compete against teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, which they did. But I do think there's something to be said for when you're playing teams that are all kind of in this wild card hunt instead of the division, the first overall seed hunt. Those are two different groups of teams. Instead of the Chiefs and the Steelers and the Ravens, it's the Raiders and the Chargers and the Miami Dolphins, who they'll face in a few weeks. If you can be competitive and beat those teams, I do think that's a step, even if you're not yet all that competitive against the Chiefs or have not beaten a division leader. I mean, it's maybe not the progression that most fans would want, because a fan every year wants to win the Super Bowl, but that still represents some sort of progression in my mind.
So, yeah, I agree, because I think that the Chargers and Broncos are very similar. They both have good defenses. They both have a lot of playmakers on the outsides, and they both have a young quarterback. So those two teams seem very similar to me. Let me just ask you this real quickly here before we get to some fan emails and voicemails here, Eric. But do you feel better or worse about this team after what you saw against the Chargers? Obviously, they won the game, but do those concerns you had entering the game, were they magnified enough where you don't feel so good today? Or are you saying what you saw in the second half makes you feel confident moving forward?
That's a good question. I think I feel better about some things. I feel better about the offense, actually, despite the fact that it did not go well for 2.5 quarters, arguably the better part of 3 quarters, because I think you saw the potential of what this offense could be when it's working. I think you saw Drew Lock, again, after several not stellar performances, he reminded everybody that this is what I can be. And so I'm encouraged about that. I'm a little worried about the run defense in particular. I know it's one game, but I think anytime you give up more than 200 yards on the ground, that's a cause for concern. I hope that that's something they can get fixed schematically rather than just not having the personnel to do it. Because listen, 3-4 is great, and you've got a chance, and we'll talk about this later in the week, Phil, you've got a chance to go to Atlanta and get a win to get back to 500. But if you're really going to be in this down the stretch and have the chance to compete for a wild card berth, you're going to have to beat a team like the Raiders. You're going to have to beat a team like the Miami Dolphins. You might have to steal a game against a team like the New Orleans Saints, who have Alvin Kamara, he can do everything. And so
all 3 of those teams had big wins yesterday.
Exactly. And so when you look at that, you can't have a weakness like that on the defensive side of the football. And so hopefully they're able to get that fixed. So I would say overall, in terms of the team's, overall standing, it's about the same, but it kind of shifted a little bit in terms of where the concern is and where it is not.
Yeah. We'll have to see. Maybe, I think on the offensive side of the ball, you hope that what you saw from Drew Lock was a turning point, and that, some of those struggles are in the past, and now you've moved forward and you're able to turn that corner. And unlike you, I think that the Broncos are going to have to play a little bit more fundamentally sound to be able to stop the run and not get caught, in bad positioning. Where these guys have some big holes and they're, getting into the secondary. So
did you say unlike me or like me?
What do you mean? I said like you.
Okay, perfect. Just
I
making sure you're not trying to spread disinformation here.
Eric, that's what you do.
No, right. I mean, Phil, I agree. It's better in a win. And on Drew, the last thing on him, if you expect this fourth quarter to just, you're going to take off from here and it's never going to be, poor or less than ideal again, you're probably setting yourself up for disappointment. As a young player, it's still going to be up and down. You just hope that there's more good than bad moving forward, and he can build on this so it doesn't get as bad as it was in the first half.
He got his swagger back.
Exactly.
So he lost it for a little bit. He's kind of like Austin Powers, lost his mojo for a little bit. Now it's back, and it's here to stay.
Have you heard back from the team store if they're going to let you return the Brett Rippon jersey, or do you have to keep that? I never bought one,
man. I got a stitched Lock jersey.
Those stitched jerseys are hard to find, I hear.
That's what I hear too. Yeah. Eric, let's move on and let's hear from some of Broncos country, some of NZ Nation, kind enough to send some emails in. You can be a part of the show. Just send an email to neutralzoneshow@gmail.com. Eric, let's start with Jansen, our friend. Jansen, very excited to have him send in his thoughts here on Victory Monday. He says he thought the defense was amazing once again, and our offense was good when it mattered. I'm excited to see this young group in a couple of years. I will reserve my concerns for a bit longer. I think a lot of people have concerns, but he says now we must celebrate. We needed this victory. That's a Hunko Jansen.
I like it. I like those thoughts. Yeah. Phil, yeah, you like the concerns. You like the concerns more than the positives. And no, I just wonder,
I'm not a negative person.
Is it a tough existence after the biggest comeback win in 8 years to just be like, I got to find something negative to talk about?
I know I don't like to find anything negative to talk about. I'm
Okay.
pumped up. I woke up this morning energized. I had 4 or 5 triple espressos, and I came into work.
Yeah. It seems like you woke up with like a little rain cloud above you, like Eeyore.
Nope. I just keep it real. It's different, being pessimistic versus keeping it real.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's
I
move
see.
on here. Thank you to Hanko listening from overseas. So we appreciate NZ World. NZ World, really. The next one here is from Scott. He says, "Hey guys, just discovered your podcast. I've been rewatching the year's games this week. It's pretty obvious that now this email came in on Friday, so before the game. He goes, I've been rewatching this year's games this week. It's pretty obvious that Bulls has had a great year. Should be congratulated for that. But here's a question, though. He wants to know if his success can be attributed to some help from Reisner. He says that Reisner's not been his best, and he thinks maybe Reisner's having to help out Bulls and Lloyd Cushenberry, Sir Lloyd Cushenberry, at the center position there. Eric, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think it's helping out Bulls. I think Bulls has played well and handled a lot of one-on-ones. I know when you talked to John Elway recently, Phil, he said that they've done some help kind of chipping with either a tight end or a running back to help Garrett Bowles. That's not Dalton Reisner, obviously. I think Dalton probably has had a little bit more to do to help Lloyd Cushenberry there, a rookie who I think has been solid at times and had the normal rookie struggles there in the middle of the offensive line. And, some of it might just be that, matchups. You face a guy like Cameron Hayward in week 2. That's a tough one for Dalton Reisner. I think Philly probably had his best game of the season, at least from a pass protection standpoint, yesterday. He had a big pickup on that 3rd and 16 conversion to Jerry Jeudy on the 43-yarder. I mean, if he doesn't stand in there, there's no way that pass gets completed. So hopefully Dalton's able to build on this. Certainly not shy about his goals ahead of the season. He talked about wanting to be an all-pro, wanting to be a Pro Bowl player. He said, I think he said that all rookie stuff wasn't good enough for him. And so he set high expectations for himself. And so maybe that's part of the reason why his play is being judged under a harsh microscope. But I think he had a nice day on Sunday.
Yeah, and they like to pull him a lot and create some running lanes, and his athleticism is on display when they do that. And I think that it's okay to be hard on him, but I also think that he's not been as bad as maybe some people have thought that he's been. So anyway, Scott, welcome to NZ Nation. Thanks for discovering our podcast. Hope you stick around for a little bit.
Yeah, what took you so long, Scott? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And then our final email here is from Jeff Flanagan, and this was sent Sunday morning before the game. He starts out by saying, "Hey, Phil," and the guy who can only be described as Phil's everything. I love it. I love it. That's you, Eric. That's you. Some of the YouTube commenters were new on YouTube. Some of them didn't like that introduction, but guess what? That's how we do it every episode around here.
Yeah, they'll get used to it.
He says here, Jeff does. He says, I'm super excited for today's game against the Chargers. I'm hoping to see our offense play to their potential. He was for a shock in that first half, but very surprised in the second half. So anyway, he commented Garrett Bowles in his first comment. So, we've gone over that a little bit, but let's get to number 2. He says, back to, I think it was 2 weeks ago, or was it last week? I kind of forget, when we talked about which Broncos player would we be most worried about getting yelled at by. And he says, how do you not mention the kid McManus after what happened last year when he threw his helmet off? He says that kind of fire and confidence is exactly what we need. Eric, what do you think about that?
It's funny to me.
I would not be afraid of. I would not.
Yeah, we like Brandon. He's a very good kicker. I'm not as afraid of Brandon McManus as I am of who did I even say? I don't even really remember. Oh, I think I said Justin Simmons because he'd be disappointed.
Yeah, exactly.
But a guy like Bradley Chubb, Shelby Harris, they're much bigger than me.
Yeah. Well, Jeff sent that email in at the beginning of the day, and then he got pumped up watching the game and left this voicemail afterward.
Phil, Eric, This is Jeff Flanagan from Lancaster, California. That was amazing. I just left you guys an email earlier today praising Garrett Bowles, and I'm so glad that didn't come back to bite me, because I know we had 3 penalties today after playing an incredible start to the season, but that was an amazing win. Still played great. Locke finally got it together at the end. So pleased. We're 3-4. We got a chance here. Go Broncos. See you guys later.
Jeff was pumped up. He was excited. We thought that maybe he was done. You know, I sent the email, sent the voicemail, but he was not done, because then he came back with this.
Phil, Eric, you know something? I'm not done. I gotta say, I think that these last 2 quarters were the most important 2 quarters of Drew Lock's career. I think that we would have had serious doubt if we did not pull this one out today. And I am so happy that it worked out as we wanted to. Looking forward to the Falcons.
Jeff, we appreciate your fire, your intensity, your passion for the Broncos. And that's why you listen to the Neutral Zone, because we bring it. We bring it.
That's right. And I agree with what Jeff has to say. I do think, biggest quarters of his career so far, potentially. I think that's not too hyperbolic, because like we mentioned earlier, had the Broncos lost 30-10 or 30-6 or something, you would have heard all week, Drew Lock's not the guy. Drew Lock, he's going to have to really turn things around to prove they shouldn't draft somebody this spring or sign a free agent. He was benched, and that should be the end of him. And that's not to say, Phil, that one game automatically means that he's a quarterback here for the next 5 years, but it does probably quiets those voices, at least for one more week. So that was big. And his other point about them still being in it, that's also right. The Raiders have a leg up on you right now. The Dolphins have a leg up on you. The Browns look like they're in good position, but you're still right in it. And if you can win some of these games over the next few weeks, and Phil, I look at Atlanta, Atlanta, Las Vegas, and then Miami. If you can go 2-1 there, or, in an ideal world, win all 3, you're in a really good spot, or a decent spot, where you're at either 6-4 or 5-5, and you're staring at the final part of this season thinking, man, if we can just keep this stretch going, we've got a chance. And that's all you can really ask for, especially after an 0-3 start.
Definitely a big quarter there, a couple of quarters there for him. Silence the doubters, at least for one more week, and keep moving on. So let's get to caller number 2.
This is Matt from South Dakota, and I just wanted to say, after this Broncos come from behind win, that it's about time the Broncos need to quit hamstringing Drew Lock. The dude knows how to win. We just need to let him take us there. And for the love of God, feed Philip Lindsay the ball. The man is a horse, and he's going to get us where we need to go. Thank you.
Got to feed Phil. I agree with that. Thanks for calling in from South Dakota there. Eric, what do you think there? They got to stop hamstringing Lock. I think we talked about that enough here. But Philip Lindsay, maybe some more carries are in his future, because we saw that burst.
Yeah, we did. And I think I've been well documented on this Neutral Zone program that I think Lindsay's at his best when you he doesn't have to carry the ball 20 times and can only get a few opportunities. And he's talked again and again, if I get 7 to 9 to 10 carries or touches, I'm going to make something happen. He had 6 carries, he had 3 catches, and he made something happen. So maybe you can give him a few more in there, but I do think Melvin Gordon's probably the better pass blocker, so that's why he's in there at times. But yeah, I mean, Phil is I think he's a great running back at this point. He's proven that again and again that he's not a one-year wonder, and he's been impressive.
I agree. I thought that they actually used both of them really well. I mean, you saw fresh legs from Philip Lindsay when he was out there, and you saw what Melvin Gordon could do, with that big catch on that final drive. In fact, I actually thought maybe they would give Melvin Gordon the ball on the 1-yard line there, just because he's got that nose for the end zone. But obviously things worked out. Good idea to give Drew Lock the option there, and got a defender caught in between him and Hamler, and obviously made the right choice. Eric, let's wrap things up with one final voicemail here.
Hi, this is Brandon from Iowa. I'm, first of all, really liking this tradition of calling into the podcast after a game, but just wanted to call and say, how about Drew Lock? How about this offense? At halftime, I don't think any of us diehard fans were expecting anything from this team today, and they came out and they showed us how they do things and what they're about this year. So shout out to Vic Fangio for having probably, in my opinion, the most mentally tough team in the NFL. And off to next week. Go Broncos!
Thanks for calling in there from Iowa. And yeah, Eric, I agree that this team is mentally tough.
Yeah, no, and there's no doubt about that. Vic Fangio said Sunday, if you're not a team, if you're not together, you don't even come close to coming back from a deficit like that. Phil, I know we don't normally do shout outs on Mondays like he just did there, but Phil, I think you deserve a shout out because you predicted ahead of the game. You said, I feel 31 points for the Broncos, and I kind of hassled you a little bit at halftime and in the third quarter when the Broncos were trailing 24-3. And I think I even said, can't wait for these 4 touchdown drives coming up. Sure enough, you knew what you were talking about. You almost as impressive as the play of guys like Phillip Lindsay, Bryce Callahan, and Drew Lock in the fourth quarter there.
And then to think, yes, I texted you 31 points, and then to think the next day you have forgotten that and come on this program and challenge me. That's ridiculous.
It's true.
Ridiculous. All right. Well, thank you to all of our voicemails and emailers. Really appreciate you being a part of the show. That's what we want to create. So keep them coming. I think that's going to do it for this Monday edition of the Neutral Zone. Heard from Vic Fangio a little bit there earlier. His thoughts after watching the tape after the Broncos. A miracle come from behind victory, 31-30 over the Los Angeles Chargers. We'll be back a little bit later on in the week to do a full breakdown of this game against the Falcons. But until then, for Eric Delisle, I'm Phil Milani. You've been listening to
The Neutral Zone.